I sent a tweet, it was last November, I think, about, you know the film Mary Poppins? So Mary Poppins, Julie Andrews,
I've seen it once or twice.
You've seen it, right? So she ends up covered with chimney soot on her face. And so Titania tweeted saying this was blackface. And there was a picture of Julie Andrews with chimney soot. This is blackface, it's disgusting. And then 5 months later, the New York Times ran an article saying exactly that. Right now, so I predicted it, and it's almost like, I'm not saying I've got magical powers or anything, but it is that thing of, how can you, when real life is catching up with you so much, there's virtually nothing that I could tweet that eventually won't happen.
This is the Rubin Report, and according to the Senate inquiry, I'm Dave Rubin. Quick reminder, guys, that the Rubin Report app is here. Just search Rubin Report in the App Store or on Google Play and join our troll-free community where you can get ad-free video and audio podcasts, connect with other viewers, and even little old me. For more info, go to rubinreport.com. And more importantly than that, joining me today is a comedian, author, and dissector of social justice, Andrew Doyle. Welcome to the Rubin Report.
Nice to see you. How's it going?
It is going well. I feel this is overdue for many reasons.
Okay.
Because, as a guy that came from the left and started saying these people are no longer liberal, and what's this social justice thing and intersectionality and all of it.
Yeah.
You are sort of the king or the queen.
Whichever way, don't misgender me, but it's one or the other, yeah. Sure, I think I've...
Of this, you are the king or the queen of this thing.
I mean, I've had that similar... I'm accused of often going over to the right, which isn't really the case. I don't see... I come from a leftist background, but I think that conservatives are right about some things. I think left-wing people are right about other things. And, I think if you subscribe to an ideology wholesale, and you just say, that's me, I'm going to agree with those points, then you're not really thinking for yourself. And that scares me a little bit, so I don't do that.
Yeah, all right, well, we're going to have to clean up some of that in the course of this next hour. Now, I'm a little confused, though, because when we were pitched you...
Yes.
This is your book.
Well, it's Titania's book, yeah.
Well, so this is the confusion. So I thought that we were having Titania McGrath on the show.
Yeah, she's not available.
And it's called Woke, and it's a guide to social justice.
Yeah.
And I thought we were having Miss McGrath.
Yeah.
And yet here we end up with you. So I'm a little confused. Can you possibly... dissect this for me?
Well, she's out and about. She's doing her protesting, I guess. She's probably gluing herself to someone's front door who's considered a negative influence on society. That sort of kind of thing. But actually, the truth is she doesn't exist. So I created her.
You're blowing my mind, man.
I know. It's not a revelation, really.
Yeah.
It was April 2018, and I thought, I'm going to create a fake character to satirize the social justice movement. Well, the excesses of the social justice movement, And so I wanted to do this sort of slam poet, very pretentious, young, very narcissistic, kind of very privileged person who wants to nevertheless say that she's oppressed. Sort of reveling in oppression and victimhood and all of that stuff. This is quite a recognizable type of person.
Yes, I've seen one or two of these people on the Twitter.
And they're kind of funny, because there's a lot of them, particularly in the UK, there's a lot of these sort of left-leaning people. They tend to write for things like The Guardian and The Independent, and they're very all about their victim status, but they come from sort of independently millionaire backgrounds, and they don't see that that's funny. I find that hilarious. And of course, they are funny. And the other thing about them, of course, is they don't want to sit and debate and reason and talk. And so therefore, the best thing to do, I think, is mock them and poke fun at them. And the hope was that if I presented their own sort of failings to them through this caricature, who obviously says things that are beyond what most normal people say. It is a sort of caricature, it is an extreme. But I thought it might maybe start some kind of process of self-reflection, potentially. It doesn't, it just seems to have got them angry.
Well, it's funny because when I see Titania's Twitter account, when I first saw it, so this is now a year and a half ago or so, it's hard to tell what's satire anymore, because the things that you or she is tweeting about, they sound very much like the stuff that we're constantly thrown at by mainstream media, actually, even though you're trying to be over the top and quite absurd.
Well, it catches up. I mean, so I'm doing my best. I'll give you an example of this. So I sent a tweet, it was last November, I think, about, the film Mary Poppins. So Mary Poppins, Julie Andrews,
I've seen it once or twice.
You've seen it, right? So she ends up covered with chimney soot on her face. And so Titania tweeted saying this was blackface. And there was a picture of Julie Andrews with chimney soot. This is blackface, it's disgusting. And then 5 months later, the New York Times ran an article saying exactly that. Right now, so I predicted it, and it's almost like, I'm not saying I've got magical powers or anything, but it is that thing of, how can you... When real life is catching up with you so much, there's virtually nothing that I could tweet that eventually won't happen.
Yeah.
You know, when I did a joke tweet about the Queen, it was the Queen's speech at Christmas, and I was saying that listing the things she should have said, and I was saying that she should have said, what about the new royal baby and how it should be raised as gender fluid? Yeah. And then, lo and behold, that was raised by Meghan. A few months later, it's like, well, on one side it's funny, and then it also depresses me a little bit that these things happen.
Okay, so before we get too far into the psychology of it, can you just explain a little bit of your background? As you said, you grew up kind of lefty, comedy, all of that stuff, just for the people that don't know. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I've been a writer for a long time. Well, I started out in academia, and I wanted to get out of that pretty quickly.
What were you teaching?
I was teaching Shakespeare. I was teaching the Shakespeare module at Oxford University.
Was there a connection between the social justice thing and wanting to get out of teaching?
Well, I was in Wadham College at Oxford, which is the most sort of, it's known for being the most woke Oxford College before the word woke was even being used by most people. It wasn't connected. No, it was. I just thought I'm stuck in libraries all the time. It's quite depressing, and I thought I'd better get out of that. So I went out. I started writing sort of comedy plays and doing stand-up in London, and then I ran out of money and I had nothing, so I was teaching. So I took up sort of secondary school teaching. I did that for about 7 years, and all the while I was doing stand-up, and all the while I was writing plays and writing stuff like that. So that's my sort of background, and I've been on the comedy circuit for a long time now, about 15 years now. So,
how woke is Oxford generally? Because I was there a couple times when I was on tour with Jordan. I spoke at Oxford Union, and I thought the questions were really rich and interesting. But then you could feel that there is this strain of something getting into the oldest, greatest place of higher learning, like this scary thing getting.
Well, there's evidence to suggest that the most privileged students, the most privileged people, the richest, in other words, are far more likely to be social justice activists, right? And Spiked Online does a survey of universities every year, and every single year it's determined that the ones that are the worst offenders when it comes to censorship, when it comes to free speech, tend to be from the kids who are the poshest, who have the most stuff, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not really surprising that you get the woke elements at Oxford. But as a kind of caveat to that, what I would say is, I do talks at universities around the country, and what I've noticed is the kids are often great, and they're often not these sort of snowflakes that people make them out to be. They're not. They want to be challenged. I mean, a number of the people that I've spoken to, they want to be challenged. They want to hear the other side, even if they don't necessarily agree. It's generally the academics. Right, I did a talk at a university recently where the students were great. They wanted to be challenged, but then the politics department refused to publicise my appearance because they said any talk that was antithetical to woke culture was against their diversity policy. So they boycotted it completely. So I often find it's my generation that are the worst when it comes to this stuff.
How old are you?
I'm 41.
If you don't mind me asking,
it's fine.
You're a Gen Xer like me.
I'm a Gen Xer,
Yeah, you know, it's so interesting because I agree with that. Even though we see the snowflakes at colleges and the screaming people and the memes of all that stuff, that it does seem to really come from the academic layer. I was given a talk about 6 months ago at a school, and a guy came up to me after. He was older than an average college student, and he told me that he was a veteran and he started college late. He said that he was in a philosophy class earlier in the day, and the philosophy professor instructed them not to go to Dave Rubin's alt-right talk that evening. And he said, I'm a little older than these students, so I didn't want to embarrass the teacher in front of the class. So I went up to him after and I said, can you tell me what alt-right opinions Dave Rubin holds? And the professor basically said, well, I don't know, but I've read that.
Yeah, sure.
And he was like, I tried to get the professor to come here, but then of course he wouldn't come and the rest of it. But yeah, the idea that they're just being hit with this stuff when they're the most impressionable.
Exactly, but some of the university professors, I think it takes a certain degree of education to say things like that because it's stupidity. It's a kind of learned stupidity, which is really odd, isn't it? And I think it's because when I was at university, there was all this kind of post-structuralism. There was all this kind of focus on Derrida and Foucault and all that kind of thing. And it was sort of dying off a few years ago. And now that's gone mainstream, and I don't know why. I find that really weird.
Do you have suspicions as to why it's gone mainstream? Any theories?
I don't know why, and I'm often asking this question. I do want to know what it is. I can't fathom it, actually. I don't know why. It involves a kind of substitution of slogans for a lack of thought. Mm-hmm. You know, so you get these phrases like lived experience,
so
or
all of the phrases that are right here. Yeah.
So what this means is, you know, when you discuss this stuff with a social justice activist, when I talk to a social justice activist, I know what their opinion is about absolutely everything. Mm-hmm. As soon as they've said one thing, they're just repeating a script. And that to me is that's not freedom of thought, right? That's an ideological adherence. And they use these phrases, and then when you challenge them on the phrases, they don't know what to do with that. to them, lived experience is just, well, that ends the discussion, right? Well, actually, lived experience, we used to call that anecdotal evidence, and we used to dismiss it,
Right.
you know? But now it has some kind of weird weight.
If you're looking for more honest and thoughtful conversations about politics instead of nonstop yelling, check out our politics playlist. And if you want to watch full interviews on a variety of topics, watch our full episode playlist all right over here. And to get notified of all future videos, be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell.